Hey, folks, good evening, and thanks for joining me on Phantoms and Monsters Radio. I welcome all new listeners and members to the channel, as well as first timers in the chat. Previous to the Chicago Mothman Winged Humanoid reports and investigation, I experienced an encounter with a similar red eyed wing anomaly in south central Pennsylvania in October 1988. Now, I've written and talked about the incident many times, but I've also wondered if the Chicago Mothman and what I called the Conewago Phantom are the same species. I've received many flying cryptid sightings and encounter reports, mostly from witnesses in North America, but occasionally an international event will come my way. And the big question remains, what are people observing? Now, this presentation will include several descriptions of flying phenomena that are not related to the Chicagoland region or even Point Pleasant, West Virginia. So let's get going with this. But before I go any further, I want to mention that this channel is made possible by you clicking on the subscribe and like buttons and by sharing our programming. If you're watching on YouTube, super chat and super thanks donations are appreciated. You can click the dollar icon located below the chat box. Other donation links are also shown in the description. So thanks for your consideration. Now, your comments are always welcome. Tell me which accounts you found interesting in the presentation or suggestions for upcoming shows. Feel free to put it in the comments. I want to thank our chat moderators, Bernadette, Marla, Thomas, and Mike, as well as Kevin and Mary over at ESP Network. Now, if you're in the chat and you have a question, please use all caps, and I'll try to get to each one of them after my presentation. So, this first account I recently received. The witness states, "Hi, Lon. On Friday night, February 21st, 2025, I observed my first known paranormal alien cryptid being. It was humanoid shaped, but had no human features, probably 6 to 7 feet in length, shadow like when viewed at first glance, but with manta like wings that were ethereal and moving rather gracefully like a sea creature, and the wings were rather translucent. There was a faint red light, but not eyes. I couldn't pinpoint it. It did move stealthily and rather quickly, followed by another one along the tree line, but not on top of the trees, about 40 foot up. There was a lot of red light drone activity in the sky to the west. Now, the beings were very close to me, but I felt they did not acknowledge me. I felt no fear. Then I looked up to my left and noticed an undulating squid or octopus like creature higher than the height of the manta creatures. I decided I should go because I wasn't sure what else I would see. Now, I'm in North Carolina and I've never experienced anything like this. I was very tired, but not on drugs. I was walking my dog, who's not the brightest, but did not notice any of this. So, thank you. So I contacted the witness and asked for more specific information. This is what I received. Hi, Lon. It was probably 7:20 in the evening. When I got home, I texted my friend, so I know the approximate time. It was in Pittsboro, North Carolina, in Farrington Village, which is in Chatham County. Interestingly, Farrington Land, about a mile away, backs up to a secure secret operations government facility nicknamed Big Hole, which I can send a link to. I had one other odd but not out, outwardly paranormal experience a couple of months ago. More about the exact location. It was behind the townhouses where I live in a section primarily of retirees along a quiet back street and has a service road that goes down through the woods to a small water treatment plant. Now, there is a small pond and a 1 mile nature trail down there. Now, I was standing on the quiet back street about to cut through to the small trail up to my townhouse. The entities were along the tree line, but not at the top of the tree line of the young life pines. Also, I want to mention there was an exceptional amount of drone activity at night, and when the FBI was looking for the group described in the second link, they first told neighbors that they were looking for a drone. So he did attach a pic of what it looks like behind his back deck. Now, apparently, this Big Hole facility, I don't know exactly what they do there, but apparently, there, and I did read the article. It was an arrest made there, so I don't know if anybody was trying to infiltrate the place or just a bunch of kids messing around. Now, this is not the first time that I've received reports of UAPs, humanoid manta winged beings in North Carolina, especially in the Raleigh Durham metro area. Now, some were reported in the vicinity of the Raleigh Durham International Airport, and this phenomena has continued over the past 2 decades. So it's still interesting that we're receiving these reports around that airport, and this report was not far from there as well. So in this next account, a man in Guyana, South America, observes a huge bioluminescent flying man bat while sitting on his porch. Now, is there a natural explanation for this sighting? He tells me, I live on the east coast of Guyana, South America, in a village that's a very quiet place to live. Now, on October 20th, 2020, while having some beers on my veranda, a close friend and I were just talking when I noticed a huge bat that was illuminated with a bioluminescent pale white glow. At first, I thought it was a freakish large chicken hawk. That thought didn't last for more than a nanosecond when I realized that it was muscular, practically ripped like some steroid junkie from its neck to its toes. Its fur was thicker in the lines that its chest muscles created in the light near the huge flapping wings. It was larger than anything I'd ever seen in the air. That's not a plane, like a mini Cessna. It flew beyond the line of houses on the street towards an empty small block that's a ball field for like sports and cricket. Its glow was something else. Its fur and even its wings were glowing, even though less so for the tips of the wings. Now, at first, I thought that my neighbor's LED lights were making it look so freakishly illuminated with that unsettling glow, but It went past the light's threshold into the darker area, all while looking like some kind of giant firefly on overdrive. Now, the closest image I can think of is a man bat from Batman, but white and glowing. The wingtips were elongated like they had talons and looked a bit darker, like they didn't have any fur, however. The stretched skin between the tips was a pale pink. It literally disappeared after reaching a darker patch, as if its glow could be turned on and off. There was no trace of it even after the darker patches, which were illuminated by lights from the houses surrounding the ballpark. Even with its massive size, it didn't make a sound. The place was quiet as hell, too, and it was close, but its wings barely seemed to disturb the air or make any type of noticeable sound. I only saw it flap its wings once, like it could glide with extreme ease, since it crossed the street to the other block before my friend could properly react. We still got a glimpse of it, though, and it was just as unnerved. Its face was bat like entirely, even with that definable curved raised snout most bats seem to have and those large ears. Around my area, we do have fruit bats, but they're it to be larger than a harpy eagle, and there's no possibility of one of those being out on the coast when they all prefer the mountainous hinterlands and are more to the middle center of the country. Now, I have seen these majestic birds a lot too, and even became friends with an extremely intelligent one while I was volunteered at a local zoo as a kid with my sister. There's no possibility of me mistaking what I saw for one of those. Everything about what I saw was bat like, but huge with longer, more muscular legs, and beyond anything I've ever seen in nature. The legs also did not look like small bat legs tapered to its wings and stretched out longer, but seemed to bend at a point where a knee would be for a human with defined calves and rounded toes. Now, after seeing it, I realized that many nights while gaming after midnight, I have noticed a silver flash through the windows that I thought were some weird trick of the moonlight. My face flat, my room faces the backyard, which is darker as there's lots of yard space between the houses and not many light sources to bounce off or around. But I now recognize that unmistakable pale glow like an anglerfish or a bioluminescent snail. So I don't know what he saw, but we do, I do get a lot of sightings, the manta ray like beings that have like a bioluminescent wing. So I don't know if this is related to that or not. But it's an interesting report. Now, this next account, the witness states, "Hello, I saw something I'd never seen before since. I was just coming home from work. It was about 3:40 a.m. driving near the small town of Jordan, Minnesota. Driving about 30 mile an hour, a white stingray type creature flying about 5 feet off the ground, maybe 6 feet in front of my car, swooping through the air almost like swimming. Since I was not going very fast, I got a very good look at it. It was bluish, maybe with some gray. I also had the lights in my car, so color was hard to tell, but 4 to 5 feet in width, about 2 to 3 feet in length. Not much of a body, but an underside bulging out almost a foot. I could not see any distinct head, but I could hardly take my eyes off the wings. I've been all over the country and seen many species of wildlife and never seen anything like this in the air. I have raised river stingrays and have spent hours watching them. It looked like a frigging flying ray. If you have any questions or have anything to tell me about this creature, please get back to me. I feel blessed to have seen something I had no idea was around. And if you have any pics of this being, I would love to see them and compare them." I said, "By the way, I forgot to mention it had no feathers, but looked like it had a very light coating of fur, like a short haired dog. I hope this helps you. And by the way, I never seen your site up until this point. It is eerie how closely it's related to the stories on your site. as to what I saw. I'm almost shivering. Thanks again. And this sighting is just one of several that I have received over the past 2 decades, looking into these flying manta rays. Uh, Now, most of the sightings that we have received over the years have been on the East Coast, but we have had a few of them out on the West. But most of them have been in West Virginia and Western Virginia, as well as up and down the Ohio River. So I don't know what they are, but I have probably documented about 20 sightings in the past 2 decades. Now, this next account, the witness states, a few years ago, I was at a privately owned campground located in Greater Yellowstone region. Anyhow, I checked in and met the dude running the place. He was laid back and down to earth. Anyhow, we connected pretty well. I felt comfortable around him and safe at his spot, which is important as I travel solo mostly. Well, we started chatting one morning, and he was telling me how he spent some time 2 or 3 months on the Appalachian Trail starting in Georgia and moving up north. I don't remember how it was brought up, but he begins telling me how one day he found a cut off the trail, an old carriage road or something, and that was pretty quiet. Now, this was in Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina. He starts telling me now he's hiking and begins hearing branches and twigs breaking off the trail to his side. Now, being the only one there, he suspects it's an animal. According to him, he sets up camp that night and begins hearing the same noises around his campsite. Well, he begins to get freaked and decides he'll rest quickly and get back on the trail. The morning comes and he hits the trail again and begins hearing the same noises. He begins telling me how he starts to get a little worried at this point. He seemed pretty legit, getting emotional, but not over dramatic. But you could tell he was affected by recalling this account. The dude tells me he starts picking up his pace on the trail, and the noises begin to keep pace with him. Finally, he reached a ranger station, which was closed. He says he was so freaked out he was ready to break in when a ranger pulled up and saw that he was distraught. He starts explaining what is going on, and supposedly the ranger tells him he's surprised he made it that far by himself and lets him in the station. Now he gets inside, and the ranger shows him a storage area with around a dozen packs that he claimed to have picked up with nobody around. Now the story gets weird, but again, he seems emotional. He claims that while in the station, he and the ranger heard something on the roof and he started mimicking the sound this creature was making. Pretty much strange and obnoxious creature noises. He claims it was a tall humanoid with wings. Now, I have no clue what this dude was recalling. However, it sent me on a quest to see if anyone else has had a similar experience on this portion of the Appalachian Trail. Again, another flying being in North Carolina, Pisgah National Forest. I have had reports of a lot of weird things down there, honestly. So, it wouldn't surprise me. So, I received this email from a man who lives west of San Antonio, Texas, near Medina Lake. Now, he states he witnessed a large flying creature on the evening of August 11, 2009. Dear sir, I witnessed a large flying creature this evening that I can't identify. I found your site during a search. I'm apprehensive about mentioning it to any friends or family until I get a grip on what it was. Now, I live west of San Antonio, Texas, near Medina Lake. Today, I was on a random outing to the area near Diversion Lake Dam. At about 7:30 p.m., I was on my way back up the trail when I suddenly heard a loud, awful scream coming from below the dam downstream. It sounded like an owl, but lasted longer and was much louder. I stopped walking and watched downstream to see if I could catch a glimpse of what caused the sound. I then noticed a large flock of birds flush out of the trees near the riverbank. That was the Medina River. Then suddenly, this giant flying creature swooped down into the river valley and just as quickly flew back up into the rocks. I continued to watch, but not did not hear or see anything again. I called a creature because it looked nothing like a bird. It was about 50 yards. I was about 50 yards from it and would say conservatively that the wingspan was 15 feet or so. It was dark colored and had a very long beak and a strange, long, thin tail. This sounds crazy, but it resembled one of those flying dinosaurs, though the head was not as large and it looked like it had feathers. I got back home and I looked on the internet for examples of bird species, but found nothing close. Now, I'm not originally from this area and I have never heard of anything like this. That is why I'm contacting you. Do you have any idea what it was? I see you have a website. Maybe someone who reads your site could identify it. Now, look, we've had a lot of Thunderbird sightings in that South Texas area from San Antonio South down into Laredo and down to the Rio Grande River. And there's a lot of different sightings, a lot of different things. There's also been pterosaur sightings there. So I don't know if that's what he saw, but it sounds like it to me. So this next account, the witness states, "Hello, I wanted to tell you a story of what I experienced in the vicinity of Rio Arriba County, Abiquiu, Tierra Azul, New Mexico. I was 15 at the time, so this was in 2005. My cousin and I were the only ones together. There was a car in front of us. All of a sudden, I saw this black figure. It looked like trash, a trash or trash bag flying in wind, but then it got closer and started to look like a runner with its hands in front of it, flat like runners when they are running. But it didn't look like a man. The car in front swerved, and in the next seconds, everything slowed down. The creature in front of the car to the right of the shoulder started coming at our car and jumped it jumped when it did that. It spread its arms and these wings came out about the size of a car widthwise from driver to passenger door. Its face was freaky because it wasn't human at all and had beady yellow eyes and two fangs. But now that I look back, it reminds me of the Mothman. It didn't have ears, and its face looked almost blank beside eyes and fangs. Now, the fangs looked like they were 3 to 6 inches sticking out of its mouth. Its chest had a white V. Its fur was something similar to a deer, like grayish white and brown. The legs were weird and looked like goat's legs. Now, the height was about 4 to 5 foot tall. The wings looked like they came out from the sides of the rib cage like a glider, but they extended longer than the arms and looked like bat wings, except they were huge. Now, my aunt told me that she thinks my cousin, who witnessed the being with me, saw it again a few years ago. Now, this is her story that she told me. My cousin was checking on the double wide because it's not connected to the grid. She told my aunt that she had a weird feeling, so she stayed in her van. It literally came out of nowhere, and her youngest daughter started screaming and pulling at her headrest from behind her and said, "It's going to get us." There by her trailer, she said she saw two yellow eyes peeking around the tree, looking both of them, then hiding again. She said that right away she got out of there. They think it was some creature. They think it was the same creature since her trailer is 1 mile from where I saw that winged creature the first time. Strangely, she saw me all those years ago, then again 10 years later. Now, this next witness states, "I saw something similar to the Mothman across the street from my home on Labor Day too. We had a cookout at my home, and we were cleaning up around 9 p.m. My brother-in-law and I were sitting in my carport talking. I saw something standing at my neighbor's basement door. I knew he wasn't home at the time, so I stood to see what this individual was going to do, and I said, 'Hey.' This is when wings unfolded, and this thing glided to the top of the house and walked away from that side of the house. When I went to the direction this thing headed in, it moved further away, and I couldn't find it again. I haven't seen anything since, but I saw that Mothman was sighted on Route 840, which is about 25 miles north of my house. So I contacted the witness by email, and I later phoned him. And he tells me this sighting occurred in Columbia, Tennessee on September 4th, 2022, on the 800 block of Iron Bridge Road. After having a family cookout, the witness and his brother in law were sitting in the carport talking at around 9 p.m. local time. Again, he noticed the movement at his neighbor's basement door and saw a human like figure standing there. He yelled out, "Hey." Anyway, this thing flew up into the roof of the house and started to move across. He walked toward the house but didn't see anything again. Now, he told me that within a year after this sighting, his mother, his aunt, and the neighbor had all passed away. Now, the witness expressed some emotion during the conversation, hoping to understand what he observed and to get answers as to why it appeared. Now, after watching the Unsolved Mysteries episode about the Chicago Mothman, he felt compelled to contact the show, and then they contacted me. Now, look, even though I'm not convinced that this was a Mothman or something similar, um, and I'm not convinced that the Mothman is a harbinger of death or bad times, this witness seemed to believe that this winged humanoid was a portent of some in that case. So, was it a Mothman or another form of winged humanoid? I don't know. Now, in this next account, a couple observes a huge winged creature jettisoned from above the cabin toward the woods. It was massive and dark in color. The wings were fully open, gliding towards the trees. So the witness tells me, "Hi, Lon. In July 2011, my wife and I were spending a weekend at a friend's cabin about 15 kilometers north of Manitou Falls, Ontario, Canada. We were both sitting on the porch looking into the woods. Two spotlights were shining off the porch, so the woods and the open area in front of the cabin were well lit. I had spent a lot of time in this general area as a boy, and I was aware of the wildlife there. It was close to midnight, and as we sat and talked, it was very mild still that night, but for some reason, and the usual sounds of the woods were subdued. Now, I wasn't alarmed, but it did seem strange. Sometimes when a lynx hunts at night, things do quiet down. So I assumed that may be what was going on. I kept my eyes open just in case another predator was about. Eventually, my wife wanted to go inside, so I obliged her and followed her. I left the porch spotlights on. I went to bed around 1:30 a.m., and both of us quickly dozed off. Now, the next thing I remember is my wife shaking me, telling me to wake up. She said that she heard a scream coming from the outside of the cabin. Now, she wasn't used to being in the outdoors, so I told her it was either an owl or a lynx. She insisted that no animal could have made that terrible noise, that it sounded like a woman was in distress. I looked at my phone. It was 2:33 a.m. I got out of bed and walked into the front living room. I looked out the window but didn't see anything. She was right behind me. Then the scream pierced the night again. This time I definitely heard it, and it wasn't like anything I'd ever heard before. Now, we stood by the cabin window and watched the woods. About 10 minutes later, we heard something on top of the cabin porch roof. It sounded like it was jumping up and down. It was so loud and forceful that I thought it might go through the porch roof. We continued to watch when all of a sudden this huge winged creature jettisoned from above toward the woods. It was massive and dark in color. The wings were fully open and not moving, like it was gliding towards the trees. We caught a decent look at this creature as it sailed upwards into the dark sky, then descended back towards the edge of the woods. It performed this maneuver two more times until it came streaming and screaming towards the open ground in front of the cabin, and then it vanished. The wings had been tight against the body, and it looked like a dark missile about to slam into the clearing, but disappeared before it hit the ground. We both jumped and let out a huge gasp. It was the most shocking experience I'd have ever had. My wife was wide eyed and had to sit down. What in the world was this thing? Now, I have tried to comprehend what we witnessed that night, and I still have no idea what it was. It had arms and legs like a human, but the body was scrawny and flexible. It's hard to describe. The head was barely visible. Overall, I'd guess it was a 4 foot or so in height and with wide billowy wings spread out to at least 15 feet when fully extended. The scream was the most memorable part of the experience. It did sound like a frightened woman, but the decibel level made our ears uncomfortable. A few days later, I asked my friend if he had ever seen anything unusual at the cabin. The most exciting event he could recall was a badger getting into the kitchen one night. That was the extent of it. I decided not to go into details with him, but did say that my wife and I had an eerie night and that we didn't get much sleep because of the strange noises coming out of the woods. He just shrugged his shoulders and said nothing. Do you believe that this flying creature disappeared into another reality, as you mentioned in the show? I appreciate your thoughts. Well, I did talk to the witness by phone, and he currently lives in North Dakota. His encounter left a lot of questions, of which he had few answers. Now, he was positive that this was a corporeal creature and that both he and his wife were not hallucinating. So, could it have been a winged humanoid or an unknown flying being? And by the description, it seemed very possible. Anyway, it'd be interesting to see if any further reports come from that general area. And I haven't received anything yet, but in a way, it sounds a bit like what we were seeing in Chicago. So I don't know. I mean, even though the structures are different, the supernatural aspects to it are very similar. Now, this next witness tells a story that they had heard from their father, who was Hungarian, and had no explanation for what he saw. Can you help to identify this being? He's asking me. So he tells me, so my father has spent most of his life in the forest. According to my grandmother, it was kind of normal that my father went missing for 2 to 3 days in their local forest at the age of 6. He spent these days walking around enjoying nature. After my grandmother realized they couldn't really stop him, it has become a regular thing. This love of nature has stayed with my father for his whole life. He still goes out hunting and camping regularly. I'm telling this to give you some context. He has spent his whole life in nature and he knows every sound and recognizes every animal at a glance. Now, he told me this story for the first time 15 years ago. As a skeptic, I didn't pay much attention to it as I believed it to be a story he came up with just to entertain or scare us. But I started to take it seriously because from time to time he retold this, and every detail stayed the same, and he was visibly nervous during his tale. He is not easily scared, so I feel like I can trust him with this and I can believe his story. So here's the encounter. So one time he spent the night in the forest with his dog, a dachshund trained for hunting. He was walking down a road separating two parts of the forest. He then realized that his dog, who walked in front of him, had stopped walking and ran back to my father and sat down between his legs. Then my father saw that someone was coming from the forest. Now, he believed it was someone on the back of a horse because he only saw the reflections of an eye, but they were too high up to be a walking person. Then he realized the eyes were way bigger than that of a normal human. He said they were the size of tennis balls and were also really far away from each other. He noticed that the creature was looking around because the reflections disappeared and reappeared as if it was turning its head. Now, when the creature saw my father, or at least acknowledged his presence, He fixed its eyes on him and came out from the trees. According to Dad, it was levitating. It was at least 50 centimeters or 20 inches off the ground. It made no sound. It was skinny, but it was wearing some type of robe or clothing, so there was nothing else to see besides his eyes that appeared to be a mix of red, brown, and gray. But since the only light was coming from the moon and stars, he was not so sure about the colors. He compared it to the Dementor from Harry Potter films. The creature did not confront my father, and it simply levitated across the path and disappeared into the woods on the other side. This is weirder than it seems since the side of the forest is just as narrow, 3 to 4 meters wide region of trees. And after the trees, there's a concrete fence to separate the forest from a factory. Now, after this encounter, my father turned back because he did not want to risk a second meeting. He spent the rest of the night in a different area. And in the morning, he went back to check for trails, but the creature had not left any signs of its presence, no footprints, and nothing at all. He says this happened in Hungary in 2002. So that's the last account, folks. If you have any questions, please put them up there, and Kevin will put it up. Travis Cruz said he missed J.C. Johnson. Yeah, I do too. I could always get a good story out of J.C. No doubt about it. Any questions, folks? I'm looking, scrolling through here. I don't see anything. Put it in all caps, and then Kevin will put it up there for me to answer. Dagnammit. Could there be a nest of Mothman near O'Hare by the small graveyard? So many sightings there. I don't think it's a nest. I think it's a portal. I think there's actually two of them there, just from what the information we have received over the years. Now, it does seem to be a concentrated number of sightings in that southwest part of the airport, and that's where the graveyard is. That's where the cemetery is at, and that's where most of the cargo people who have made reports have have commented where they've seen it. And there's been a lot of things that have gone on in that cemetery. So other humanoid sightings as well. So I don't think there's a nest. I think there's something moving in and out. So and I've always said I think it's interdimensional. Can Squatch, do you get many bat creature reports? Uh, Probably more than normal. I mean, more than most people do. And I say that because of the Chicago sightings. More people are seeing these things and commenting on them and not afraid to open up about it. Before all this started in Chicago, I wasn't getting many at all. And I was curious about that because I did check back in the archives, and there weren't many there, very few. But yeah, we do. But I do get a fair number of them. Brian McGlade, any recent sightings in Chicago? Nothing really recent. The last real decent sighting that we got was the one back in April west of the city when the guy took a shot at it. And I did talk about it on another video, so you might want to go back and look at it. But I did update the Chicago sightings on there. So last year I think we probably had 5 or 6 sightings in the Chicagoland area, and of course after the Unsolved Mysteries presentation, and people sent sighting reports to the producers, and they contacted me, and we got a few more after that, but not many of them are recent, but there were a few. Apodicamets are the mantis sightings ETs. I don't know. I really don't know. I was involved with that Musconacon River mantis sighting spree that we had back in 2013, 2014. If you saw it on Monsters and Mysteries in America, there were three or four different sightings, and there were some other obscure sightings. The way these things acted, they did disappear, almost like they were going through a portal. They'd vanish or simply manifest. Are they alien? I don't know, but people do talk about in abduction scenarios where they do meet up with an overlord like mantis creature who's kind of running the show. But are these the same beings? I really don't know, and I haven't had anybody tell me that the way these creatures in New Jersey were described, that they closely resembled abduction type or supposedly alien minded beings. So I really don't know if they're ETs or not. Jake Hins, Lon, do you remember the cases Mount St. Helens where angels hitchhiked and told the driver about the coming event? Yeah, I do remember something about that. Um, I had I don't know if you're referring to the one of the cases that was given to me, but it was something similar to that, and I maybe that's what you're referring to. But these two people who were picked up did mention something about something may happen, or I'd have to go back and look at it. It's been a while. I'll dig it up and talk about that at some point in the future. But yeah, and I've heard other situations where people had come forward and talked to people who had literally predicted what was going to happen at Mount St. Helens. So but that mountain was rumbling for over a year anyway. So I guess people maybe they were psychic, but then again, maybe just made a good guess. Um, F. Kier Furt. I am also from North Dakota, and I posted a story on your site about a flying creature that looked like a gliding ape. Hmm. You may have. I don't remember it offhand, but yeah, I don't get a lot out of North Dakota. And normally, when I do get something out of North Dakota, it's something to do with the missile silos and missile sites in North Dakota, Minot and other missile sites. So I had to go back and look for that one. Maybe you did send it. I just don't remember it offhand. Brian McGlade, have you considered remote viewers looking into this? I am a remote viewer. I've looked, I've tried. Um, Cryptids aren't usually the easiest thing to remote view. Alien beings, most of the time you get blocked. But now one of the folks who listens to the show regularly, Shorter Cook, she's an RVer and she has a team. She's in Australia. I don't know if she's in tonight or not, but maybe I'll talk to her about him. I can. I've got some cases I may want to give her to look into. She's done several cases for me and for her colleagues, so maybe we can come up with something. I haven't done anything with her since the Yorktown hotel investigation. That was back in July last year, so it's about time to maybe look into some more cases and see if we can come up with some answers. Can Squatch Portal. What dimension do you think Mothman is coming from? My personal opinion is I think it's a parallel universe, a parallel dimension. to ours, to our Earth plane. Now, there's a lot of theories about linear dimensions parallel to ours. Um, but with the evidence that we have received, the anecdotal evidence that we have received from witnesses, where they literally see them manifest or literally see them vanish into an invisible doorway, and they look corporeal. I mean, they look like they're flesh and blood. There's definitely something supernatural about these beings. Um, and I don't, I think most cryptids may have some similar aspects to them. That's just that's just my opinion from all the cases I've looked into, all the situations I've looked into over the years. Um, I mean, to the point where I kind of expect to hear something like that with unexplained reason as to why they manifest in most reports I get. Now, a lot of times a witness won't mention it, but if you keep at it, and not try to spur them into it, don't make suggestions that but try to get them to be more specific as to how the sighting manifested or how it started. Many times it does seem that other phenomena does occur, like orbs or other strange shimmering or things like that. So I think the whole interdimensional, ultradimensional portal theory, even though we really don't have any way of proving that, is something we had to consider. Podicamets, is there a rip, a portal in Chicago, perhaps? Well, we looked into that. I don't know if there is or not. Now, there isn't a particle accelerator in the Chicago area. Uh, the Fermi Labs, which is out in, I think that's Cook County, but it's the oldest particle accelerator in the United States. It's almost 50 years old now. Um, is that causing some type of terror in the fabric? You know, people have speculated about particle accelerators, CERN, and other things opening up other dimensions. I suppose it's a theory. Oh, it is a theory, but I suppose it may be something to that. But as time goes on, maybe we will start to get some more tangible evidence as to what that really is. I'm not saying it's impossible, but at this point right now, we really don't have any proof of that. Dagnabbit. Any stories on Darrows, a fast moving 3 foot in height gnome or troll, hooded black hood and dangling nose 10 inches long? I think I had one time. That was a long time ago. Um, that Darrow's description sounds familiar. Um, I'll have to look, but offhand, I can't really think of one. Anything else, folks? Okay, let's see. We got one more here. Apollo Comets. Do you think the Mist movie makes sense with Mothman cryptids that we have reports of? The Mist movie. I don't know. I don't watch a whole lot of movies. I watch every once in a while. I see something. I don't know exactly what you're referring to. Uh, if you come more specific, can Squatch, you mentioned a connection among cryptids. Do you think maybe tricksters are manifesting different forms? It could be. It could be, but there you're going back into the whole uh, um, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, is there something like that, like a gin or something like that? I don't know. I hear that trickster uh, moniker come up a lot, referring to a lot of different types of phenomena, and I just don't know if that is what's really going on. And I had talked about jinn and other type of supernatural beings that may be able to manifest these type of things or even shapeshift. But I'm not really sure what the case is with as far as what you're making a reference to. So okay, folks. Well, I want to thank you for coming around tonight. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks to each and all of you for watching and chatting. If you donate, it's truly appreciated. Your support is what makes this all possible. So please like, subscribe, and share. If you have a sighting or an encounter report that you would like to be considered for the personal report show or post to the Phantoms and Monsters, feel free to contact me at my email at lonstricklerphantomsandmonsters.com. Also, if if you'd like to have something talked about, or if you think there I can kind of put the show together for a certain phenomena that you haven't heard about or I rarely talk about, go ahead and send it to me and we'll see what it can do. So until we meet again next week, stay healthy and safe. Good night and have a great weekend.